And we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is the pre-show. If you're watching this in the replay, you can fast forward about 15 minutes to the start. If you're not watching this in the replay, you can hop in your time machine and fast forward 15 minutes into the future. I see the chat room is there. Hello, chat room. Should probably put a link in there so everybody knows that we are live. We are live. We're not doing anything. We're just live. It's not like there's a lot that happens. Well, sometimes there's a lot that happens in the pre-show. That's never good. But this time, I think it's okay. I think we've got things in order. Saying that, of course, will ultimately mean that things will not be in order. But here we go anyway. So let's do a quick camera check. Number 2, number 3, number 4. Number 4's doesn't have a thing up. It needs a thing. Let's see if this works. Let's see if that works. That does work. So number 4 now is there. Let's stick my head in there. Hi. Hello. And do we have me here? Yes, we do. With a phone number that we will have there later. And the graphic. All right. That's all good. Cameras work. Stream is up. How's it sounding? We need to figure out how it sounds. I've been talking for a while now. So I should be able to go to my link on my website and click on a thing. I should probably change the banner at the top. It's on my list and see what this sounds like. Let's stick my head in there. Hi. Hello. And well, it sounds fine. We have there's too many people now talking at once. Please be quiet. There we go. That's good enough. Let's change the website banner. Where's my thing? There it is. Let's log in and change the little banner at the top of the website that says, no, it's not on Saturday. It's now. Let's find out. Content, custom text, because I can't do anything standard. It has to be custom text. Let's change the link to /live. My free live A+ study group is right now. Right now. Exclamation mark. Click here to join us. To join us. That's not a word. There we go. Free live A+ study group right now. Go to the live link. Save custom text. And let's empty our caches. See, it's not good. If you're hearing me in your sleep, that's not good. It could be a number of problems. And that's why your doctor prescribes whatever it would be. Should probably get that checked out. Yeah, Mrs. Professor Messer would not want to hear my voice in her sleep. It would not make her happy. It wouldn't make me happy. I talk enough during the day. Okay, I managed to take a vocal zone minutes ago. So for those of you on the vocal zone alert, got my vocal zone. Let's see, we gotta show my got the vocal. I'm running low. I have to order. It's very important. All right, that's all. Looks like it's working. Socrative is up for those of you that are joining for the first time. If you go to socrative.com and you log in, let me go to that page. Let me get off mic so you can't hear me. Let me go to this page. Why is that a build? Okay, so if you go to Socrative, right there, why did that show? That did not show. Okay. So you can go to Socrative, go to the student login, go to the Professor Messer room, and you can follow along and get the app on your devices, on your things. You know, I kept meaning to do make a I have notes that I make during the last study group, and then I remember I have the idea again, and I write it in my notes, and there's the note from last time that I did absolutely nothing with. And there it is. All right. Is this okay? Is that the right height? It's so hard to tell. So difficult to really get that in there. Okay. What else do we need to do here? Recording. That's what we need to do. So let's open this up and let's turn recorders on. Recording. How's it look? Does it look good? Yes, it does. It looks fine. The Cylons are going. Now, the study group will start at the top of the hour. The primary main study group goes for about 1 hour. And then I take phone calls, open phone lines, where we can discuss darn near anything in the second hour, unless nobody calls. And then I will talk for an hour. I'll take questions from the chat room. In fact, I should probably pull up my questions and have them ready to go. Wouldn't that be great? That'd be great. So let's do that. We'll log in. Whoops. Log in. And download those questions. This would be our A+ study group. And let's download your questions. Where's that link? Export. There we go. And clickety click. Nice. And let's make this nice and big. And let's sort this. Data sort in our spreadsheet. Windows are in the wrong place. Sort by when you were added. So I can see exactly when. Why are there people here? Oh, okay. So we need to go down to this month. It's a little bit here. Okay. And to the questions. Boom. And that's ready to go. Thank you for adding the live link to the chat room so that other people can find it. Let's do a check of the beverage. Refreshing. The battery in my phone expired on Wednesday, and my life has not been the same since. I've ordered a new battery that will be here today, and I need to swap it out. But that can mess you up. I was getting messages. It's an iPhone 5, and I was getting messages that the sensors in the iPhone, in fact, I can find the exact message that was happening. Where is that? The message was, is this already running? It's not. Really? So I guess I don't have it. But it was saying that the sensors, there's a number of sensors in the battery on iPhone that I think 5 or 6, depending on the right one. And it was saying that it can't receive, it's not receiving anything from the sensors. And it was a reboot loop. It would just reboot and reboot and reboot and reboot and reboot. So I was able to log in and do that. Yes, the laptop here is a MacBook. I've got an iMac in front of me. I have a cinema display, the 27-inch to the right. I guess it's not the cinema display, but it's the 27-inch iMac-looking display. To the right of me, there's my iPad here that controls the slides. I have 2 screens in front of me, these very small monitors that are used for my preview, which will go out when I click a button, and this is what's live right now. In front, which you can't see, is a big, I don't know, is that 60-inch television in front of me back there that's showing me the video switcher, which is the same thing as this screen that's to the left of me, but it's so small I can't see certain things, and that's useful for kind of monitoring and maintenance, but the big screen back here normally isn't back there when I'm not doing a live stream. So that makes a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 screens in front of me if you count the screens that are on the cameras. that are showing me what's on the cameras. That would be 9 and 10 behind me. So there's 10 LCD little monitors going just to run a live stream. Is this really necessary? 5 minutes and we'll get started. My Linux computer, you're on it. You are running on two of my mini Linux computers. I have now a load balancer, 2 web servers, and a database server. So there's 4 Linux machines right now that you would not be chatting if those were not working. And I'm planning, I just got a Windows box with a relatively decent, kind of a last generation, maybe 2 generations old video card, but that's still pretty good. It's still like a nice video system that I've got. It's an old gaming machine that has been upgraded that I'm going to be putting down here next to the Cylons. And I'm hoping to be able to stream 1080p next time. And next time is not next Saturday, by the way. Next time is going to be Wednesday, not Wednesday, but a week from Wednesday. Check the calendar at professormesser.com/calendar. Yeah, the Network Plus study group is going to be in the middle of the week. So we're going to see how that goes. I may be the only one here. We'll find out how that goes. We'll find out if that was really a smart idea. What I really should do is do one where I just roll out of bed and come in here and just do a really bad study group just to see just how bad we can make that. The answer would be very, very bad. Not a morning person's. Yeah, can't you see my Cylons? They're down here recording. They're really doing a circle. It's not really silent. At least I don't think it's a Cylon. One never knows. Don't need that over there. It's over there. I think my nest is made. We'll have to see. Temperature is pretty good. Yeah, one good thing about rolling out of bed is the bed head is very much minimized. There's not a lot of bed head going on. I don't have any Cisco materials. I'd love to do some. Don't have any at the moment, but it'd be great to have some Cisco stuff. Hello, Scotland. We were just talking about you at dinner last night with the Mrs. Professor Messer, talking about 2 weeks that I spent in Edinburgh. I'm going to take her back to see the castle and the Holyrood and walk up whatever that big hill was next to the big park down there, the Holyrood Park. And, of course, the Scotch. So, ultimately, that's how it works. Boy, what a great time that was. Those are my people in Scotland. I don't know what it was. I just connected with those folks. They were awesome. And then I came home to the DNA check, and sure enough, they are very much my people. I did that 23andMe. I know exactly where my people are. They are all over. I'll have to show that sometime. It's a hoot. It's a hootenanny. It's a trip. All right, minute to go. Yeah, I stayed in the grass market with a room overlooking the castle. It was idyllic. It was very nice. Oh, we could turn the study group into a drinking game really easily. I would start it. There would be something here. I would just pour. I would do it. I would participate, which would just make it worse on everyone. Why don't we do a study group then? Why don't we want to do that? Yes, I live in a part of Florida. There's a very big Scottish contingent in Tallahassee, Florida. A lot of the names of streets, the areas are very Scottish, which is pretty awesome. Okay, we'll do a study group then. Should I set up maybe a graphic here? Yeah, that looks good. And I'll have to put my big head on the other thing. And okay, we should get started with the study group. Stand by. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the July 2015 Professor Messer Live A+ Study Group. Of course, it's live. We really couldn't do this unlive because you get to participate. I have questions for you. You get to answer them live. We get to see how you answered them live. Well, not you, but we'll see how everyone answers them live. So I'd like for everyone who's watching live to join in. You can follow us if you're watching this on the YouTube channel. We have a live chat that's going on my website. You can go to professormesser.com/live and participate in the chat. We've been having a delightful time. If you go back and listen for the first 15 minutes of the replay, we always have some conversations there. In the first hour, we'll do that Q&A. And in the second hour, I'll go through the process of just taking phone calls. I'll just open the phone lines up and we'll see what goes on. We'll see what trouble we can get into. This is our study group we do every month. So if you ever want to see what the latest is with our study group, you can find it on my calendar, professormesser.com/calendar. Later on, when I open up the phone lines, you'll be able to call in toll free. You can also call in via Skype anywhere in the world for free at 855-785-RJ45 and the +1 at the beginning if you're calling in via Skype. This is something that will also be posted immediately for replay, as all of my study groups are on my YouTube channel at professormesser.com/YouTube. And if you want to follow our daily A+ pop quiz, you can easily get it on the Twitter machine at professormesser.com/Twitter. And of course, I'd like to mention that we have our 10% vouchers. Our sponsors from GTS Learning provide those. GTS Learning sponsors those vouchers at professormesser.com/vouchers. If you are watching this for continuing education units, it's worth at least 1 hour for your A+. You can get a maximum of 4 of these during your 3-year renewal. There's more information about the continuing education for your A+ and renewing your A+ certification on the CompTIA website. But somewhere in this first hour, I will be giving you a secret word, and that secret word is what you will email to me, and I will send you back a digital certificate that says, yes, you must have listened to this because you knew the secret word, and that's worth at least 1 of those 4 hours. So unfortunately, you can't watch all of my study groups and get all of the number of hours that you would need, but you get at least 4 of them if you watch 4 of these study groups. So that's at least worth something, isn't it? This is also something that I like to mention because I'm able to do these live study groups because I've taken all of those videos that you're able to watch for absolutely free, and every single one of my videos is available. Every minute of every video is on YouTube. You can go to my website at Professor Messer and see the entire index there of every video. But some people like to take them with them, like to take them offline when you're not connected to the internet, and I have a version of those available that you can get at professormesser.com/downloadable-A+. This also includes MP3 audio, so if you like to listen in the car, I have my slides available in PDF format there, and all of these videos have transcripts and closed captions associated with them, not just the ones that are downloadable, but the ones on YouTube are as well. And if you go to my website, the entire transcript of the video is there. Someone found an error in the transcript, which is very unusual because I have people actually typing this in. So it's been, I think, about a year or more since we've had those transcripts. Somebody found an "and" should have been an "or." That's about as detailed as you're going to get. They're very good transcripts. They are exceptional. So it's something that if your English may not be your first language, or you're just trying to figure out what is that word that he is saying, it's on the transcripts, it's on the closed captioning. And if you see something that's not quite right with them, I can click a few buttons and correct anything. So that's one of the nice things that came there. Now, I mentioned we are going to be also answering questions today, and you get to participate. This is interactive, not just in the chat room, but I'm going to ask questions and you'll be able to answer on your mobile device, or you can pop open a new window in your browser and answer as well. This is something called Socrative, and you'll want to log into Socrative at Socrative.com and click on the student login and go to the Professor Messer room name. Now, there is also an app that you can download for Google Play, for the App Store, for the Windows Store, and you can have that particular Socrative app running at the same time on your mobile device, however you'd like to do it, however makes sense for what you would like to do, that's the way you can make that happen. And I already have a question up in Socrative. As a matter of fact, if you go there, you'll see this question. How long have you been studying for your A+ certification? In fact, a number of you already answered. I can click a button. We'll see interactively exactly what we see. So 31% less than 3 months. We have 5% have said 3 to 6 months, 25% 6 to 9 months, 23% more than 9 months. That's me. I'm definitely take a long time when I do my certs. And 18% already have your A+ certification. So you must be watching this for continuing education units. We try to get those CEUs sent out generally in the next week or so. So that is one thing I always try to do that and be able to make that happen. There is quite a bit that you can do. If you'd like to follow along and participate with this again, you go to the Socrative website, click the student login, and go to the Professor Messer room name. Make sure you spell it right. PROFESSORMESSER. That has to be absolutely correct for you to be able to do that. And then you'll be able to see this question. You'll click a button and it will register on this end, and we all get to follow along. So we've got a pretty good mix today. It seems like a lot of us are getting started. A lot of us have been doing this for a while. And I've got questions today that kind of go through some new things. In fact, I have new content, some new things I created just for this study group today. So we should be able to make that happen. So why don't we go into this? Before we get into the questions and all the things associated with it, this is something where I've got a lot of questions about the exam over the last month. Currently, the A+ exam is the 220-801 and the 220-802. There's two separate exams you have to take. The 801 has PC hardware, networking, laptops, printers, and operational procedures. And the 802 has operating system security, mobile devices, and troubleshooting. You can get a maximum of 90 questions. You might get fewer than that. They're both multiple choice and performance-based questions that you might get on that exam. And you can see the passing score. It's an odd passing score scale. It's a 675 on a scale from 100 to 900. So there's 800 points in there, and you need to get a 675, except it starts at 100. I don't know either, but that's the way they do it. And you need to get at least a 700 on the 802. Now, CompTIA has said in the social medias that they plan on releasing an updated version of the A+ certification at the end of this year. So it should be coming relatively soon. We're in the summertime now. We're in July. So sometime before the end of the year, they plan on coming out and releasing a new version. When they do that, they have in the past given an overlap period where the current version, the 801 and the 802, will still be available to take. They usually give about a 6-month ramp there. So if you're studying right now, you've got at least a year, I would think, or at least into 2016 would be probably the best way to say that, because if they bring it out tomorrow, you've still got 6 months to take this exam before it goes away. So if you're trying to figure out, do I study this? Do I wait for the next one? Study this one. Get everything going. Even if you wanted to change the horses in midstream when the 900 series came out, that would be something where you can easily study, because there's only a minor difference. It's an update. Now, there's probably going to be operating systems that disappear, new operating systems that appear. We don't know yet, because CompTIA has not released the updated version of all of these exam objectives. But when we finally get that objective list, we'll absolutely know more about what's there. There's certainly a lot to learn on the 801, and probably quite a bit to learn on the 900 series when it finally comes out as well. So let's do some questions. And the ones that tend to get people really riled up are the printer questions. So let's do a printer question. We'll start with that. We will hit you straight away with a printer question. Which of these interface types is not commonly used by printers? This is a very common type of question to get on the exam, where they're not asking you what something is, they're asking you what something is not. So of course, you're going to need to answer this question as well. Let's have a look at what the possible answers might be. Is it going to be A, USB? Is it going to be Ethernet? Is it going to be Bluetooth? Is it eSATA, or is it parallel? One of these interface types is not commonly used by printers. So this is one where I'm not really asking you a printer-specific question. It's more of a installing printer question, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. And one of these is definitely not a an interface type. This is one where you should be able to do a process of elimination. Well, I know that's a printer interface, and I know that one is a printer interface, and you're eventually going to come out with the one where it is not going to be the printer interface in this particular view. If you think you know the answer, pop open a new window, go to Socrative.com, click the student login, and go to the Professor Messer room. And you can just stay in that room because I'm just going to put up the new questions and they'll just pop up magically on your screen every time that I have a new one. So let's see how we did. We have a number of you that have already answered this one. So let's see how we're doing. Got 61 of you have answered. Let's see. And wow, we have probably a very clear majority of 82% have said eSATA, 13% have said Bluetooth, and really we've got 3% USB. Nobody said Ethernet. Obviously, it's a very common interface for printers, and 4% have said parallel. Well, is it really eSATA? You know, we've had in the past with study groups where one answer was clearly the winner and it was absolutely wrong. So we should probably drill down more into interface types and what's there. And we'll look at both wired and wireless connections. Both of those interface types can certainly be used on printer. Serial interfaces aren't very common these days. You tend to see them on older legacy equipment. Sometimes point of sale terminals might use serial. These days you see a lot more of USB, which is an updated version of serial. Obviously, it is a serial bus, the universal serial bus. The USB or serial connections in the past have been these 9-pin or 25-pin serial connections. And so one of those is certainly, if you run into a serial connection, you're running into a very, very old printer in that scenario. It's probably more likely if it's an older printer that it's going to be a parallel connection, which is also a 25-pin connection, except it's female on the computer. And it's one that has this odd Centronics connection. You can see the Centronics one right there. It's this funny little connector that has these clips that fasten it to the back of the printer. Again, that's a really old printer if you're still working with those, because these days practically everything is running USB. You're just plugging in. It's the universal interface, isn't it? You plug in a USB connection and that's what you're going to be wiring everything else up with. And of course, plug in your Ethernet. I've got a printer here in the studio where I just connect an Ethernet cable and now it's Ethernet connected. In fact, mine I think is not even Ethernet connected. It has an Ethernet port on it, but it also has a wireless connection on it as well, where it has an 802.11 wireless. There's some older printers that have done infrared. That was back in the day, as they say, where you were able to take a mobile device, or our laptops even had infrared in them. And these days we're seeing a bit of a resurgence with infrared in our mobile devices. Our mobile phones, especially Android devices, have infrared. These days they're using the infrared not for printing, but for controlling things like media devices. So you can use your mobile device as a remote control for your television or your cable box, for instance. You've also got Bluetooth that's used on wireless. You don't see a lot of printers on Bluetooth. Usually it's printers that are designed for mobility that are providing that Bluetooth connection, since that would be more of a personal printing connection, maybe in a small office or home office, for instance. And of course, 802.11, like I just mentioned, would be those. So if you look at all of the different answers, interface types that we just discussed, you've got USB. Yes, definitely USB. We definitely have Ethernet. We definitely have Bluetooth. We absolutely parallel is a interface that you'll see out there. eSATA, however, primarily used by storage devices that are external to your computer. And if you're one of the 79% that chose D, eSATA, you got that one absolutely correct. Congratulations. See how easy that is? See how fun that is to do a question and kind of go through the answers and figure out what's right? Let's do another one. So I've got another question for you. This one is a little bit more difficult. We're going to switch gears and move over to the 802 exam, and we're going to talk about operating systems, more specifically troubleshooting operating systems. The question is, which of these commands would be used to write a new boot sector onto the Windows 7 system partition? So this question is very specific in what it is asking for. It wants to know a specific command. It wants to know what would be used to write a new boot sector onto the Windows 7 system partition. So this is a very common problem you would run into, especially if something has in fact corrupted or removed the boot sector that is on the Windows 7 system partition. You see this a lot with malware. I've got a number of options available for you. Is the option fix MBR? Is it bootrec/fixboot? Is it fixboot, or is it bootrec/fix MBR? It's got to be one of these, right? So one of these answers is going to be the way that you would fix the boot sector on a Windows 7 system partition. Some of you in the chat room are asking about printers, SCSI printers. You know, I don't know that I ever saw a SCSI printer, SCSI connected printer. I imagine they could have one. It'd have to be very specialized to be SCSI. I'm thinking back, there were certainly SCSI connected scanners. It's just that the interface for printers has always really been parallel. Very rarely did you see serial. Almost always you saw parallel, and these days almost always you see USB or wireless. And because parallel was so easy to print and so ubiquitous, it was on every single computer, and SCSI was relatively complex and very difficult to find a SCSI interface unless you installed one on a device. Printer manufacturers didn't create a SCSI connected printer. It was overkill. So almost everything for a printer is going to be parallel connected on the older computers and USB on the newer ones, really. It's the ones that are always off the beaten path that you always have to know. Yes, there could be a serial connected printer. Those types of things are just very rare to see, are very specific, maybe used in a very specific environment. So about this question, which of these commands will be used to write a new boot sector into the Windows 7 system partition? A lot of you seem to know the answer. We've got it 68, 69 people. Let's see how we did. We're all over the place. We are double digits with everything. None of us are quite sure. So we have fix MBR, bootrec/fixboot, fixboot, bootrec, 15%, 38%, 12%, 34%. It looks like the smaller percentages, the two, the fix MBR and fixboot, are the smaller ones, and then we're sort of mixed between bootrec fixboot and bootrec fix MBR. So we need to figure out which one of these it would be. So let's first look at how the booting process actually works. And we're going to talk specifically about a legacy BIOS, because that's really what the A+ exam is currently focused on, is what they call the legacy BIOS, which is different than the UEFI or UEFI BIOS that you might see on newer systems. But we're going to talk just about legacy BIOS, which is the one that you see in the videos that I have. It's the one that is on the exam. And in this legacy BIOS, when your system starts up, of course, this BIOS is responsible for kind of getting everything started. That is the first thing that starts up. You see the splash screen. It goes through a memory check. It checks to find if you have any storage devices. It sees that your keyboard is connected. And then it needs to know what to do. So the first thing that's going to happen is that legacy BIOS is going to find on the first storage device, because in our BIOS we're setting up which devices you're going to boot from. You may put them in the right order, for instance. You may have to go into your BIOS and readjust which one of your storage devices is really going to try to boot from first. So it goes to that first storage device to see, is there a master boot record on that particular device? And that master boot record says, yep, I'm right here. I've got it from here. It takes over effectively control from the BIOS and says, let's start up whatever happens to be on this particular storage device or the storage devices in our computer. And I'm the master boot record. I'm going to control things from this point on. The master boot record may also have multiple partitions. In fact, the system, the view I have here, I actually have two different partitions on this particular system. Each one of the partitions, in this case, happens to have its own boot sector. So now I've got a master boot record, and I might even get a set of menus on my screen that says, which operating system would you like to start? Would you like to start the blue one, or would you like to start the red one? And then I get to choose which one of these I would like to start. The master boot record then talks to the boot sector and says, okay, you're the partition I'm choosing. I'm going to go the boot sector for this partition and this operating system. Start yourself up, please. This is a simplification, of course, because there are many different options and different ways to do this. In fact, you could even get rid of the boot sector entirely and do everything with the MBR, but I'm trying to keep this in the most common way is what we're looking at right here. So you've got a master boot record and a boot sector that have now been touched. The boot sector's responsibility is to now talk to the kernel of the operating system and get things going. So of course, problems can happen anywhere. Your BIOS may not be configured to boot from the proper device, and so it never finds the master boot record. You may have a master boot record that is corrupted due to malware or due to another program overwriting it, so you may need to overwrite the master boot record. The operating system that is running in one of these partitions may have its boot sector corrupted by malware or by a backup or by a restore that occurred or another application. So we may have to also refresh the boot sector that's in that partition as well. So to solve some of these problems with the file system, you're going to see things like an operating system not found, which means we need to rebuild the master boot record. Maybe you get a way to do that would be to go into the Windows Recovery Console for Windows XP and just run those single commands. But remember, our question for this particular question was really talking about doing things in Windows 7. And Windows 7 has a completely different set of commands than Windows XP. In fact, in Windows Vista and Windows 7 use exactly the same command for this particular piece. So you have bootrec fix MBR and bootrec fix boot that is going to fix the master boot record and the boot partition respectively. So this would be a good way. If you wanted to see more of this, I've got a video, the Windows Recovery Console and Command Prompt, that actually steps you through exactly how you do this. You take your installation media, you boot from that, you click on this, you get to that recovery view, and then you can type these things in. And I actually have a corrupted system that I type things in and I fix it, and we're able to see that in real time in that video. So in our particular case, we need to do the fixing of the boot sector in Windows 7. That's the bootrec/fix boot. And if we look at the folks who answered here, in fact, 39%, the most number of people in this particular case, did choose B, which is bootrec/fix boot. And you got that one absolutely correct. So good for you, you 39% of you. And for the others that didn't get it, now you've learned. Now you know on the exam, if you get that question, it's bootrec/fix boot. Now, if I'd asked, which of these commands would be used to write a new master boot record onto the Windows 7 boot device, you would know that you would have chosen bootrec/fix MBR, which is D. And if I'd asked a question about Windows XP, it would have been A or C, depending on which one of those I was asking about. So that is the question about booting your system. That's a very useful one. In fact, you're recovering a lot of systems that get a lot of malware, or people that are trying to install multiple operating systems onto their machine and trying to dual boot or triple boot their system. You may have to run these so that you can get back into the Windows and be able to access that data again. All right, that was a bit of a tricky one. So let's shift gears a bit and do another one. This is really one more of a troubleshooting / perhaps something we can work on our operating system. At least it's something we need to know about with our operating system. And that is, when would you use SFC? There's got to be one reason that we would use SFC to run on our system. If you happen to know, you can go to Socrative.com into the Professor Messer Room, because I have some options for you. A would be to check the physical sectors of a hard drive. Would it be to check the master boot record? The C option is to perform a logical check of the file system. Or it could be D, to check service permissions. Or E, to perform an integrity scan of the operating system files. So I've got a number of things. All of these, I guess, would be good in a troubleshooting perspective. And in fact, there are indeed programs and utilities you can use to do all of these things. But I want to know specifically about SFC. It's got to be one of those to be able to work with that. SFC. Go out to Socrative.com, go to the Professor Messer Room, and you can answer those things as well. There's quite a bit to go through. See, I knew somebody in the chat would find a SCSI connected printer somewhere. It's got to be one of those out there in the world. I worked a lot with, at one point, we really didn't have anything universal that would work across the board. So a lot of things were SCSI connected. Our CD-ROM drives were SCSI connected. Our scanners were SCSI connected, because there wasn't a bidirectional standard interface that provided the bandwidth needed. We had serial connections, which were bidirectional. The original parallel connections were a one-way connection until they updated the specification and provided bidirectional with that. If you are doing this or watching the stream, you should go out to Socrative.com and go to the room name Professor Messer. There's no need to send me the link in the chat, because I'm talking and I can't answer that. So I can't type into the chat right now. Usually I'm right there in the chat all the time answering that, but not in this particular case. This is one where SFC can come in handy as well. We were really talking about troubleshooting malware and recovering and that type of thing. Let's see how we did. So nobody said check the master boot record because we just did a master boot record question and you knew it wasn't that. Check service permissions. Nobody, 1% of you chose that. Somebody did. Checking the physical sectors of the hard drive, 16% said that. Perform a logical check of the file system, 31% said that one. But 51%, just over half, said to perform an integrity scan of operating system files. So would that really be an SFC? Let's find out. Well, the system file checker is indeed an integrity scan. It goes through, and as the name implies, it is checking the file system files. It's going through the operating system. The command specifically, you can see it on the screen, is SFC/scan now. And it's going to go through your system and look at the operating system files. This is really useful to do after you have cleaned up a malware infection and for some reason you've decided not to completely erase everything and start from scratch. You've decided you're going to fix it. Good for you. I'm sure you have that kind of time, but hopefully this will get rid of everything when you fix it. And hopefully none of your operating system files have changed. But if you wanted to be sure that the integrity of those files is still in place and that there is no really bad malware that has corrupted or changed any of those files, you can run an SFC/scan now. It's going to go through the system scan and tell you if there's any problems there associated with that. It gives you a log file that you can go into to see exactly what may have been changed, what might have been updated, so you'd be able to find and run through that and make sure your operating system is in good place. In the chat room asking when would you run this? Why would you be sent to the command line to run an SFC? And it's always if you're ever concerned that one of your operating system files has been changed in some way or corrupted in some way, this is a good sanity check for you to make sure that indeed this has found that particular problem. And it will find any operating system file that has been changed and it will correct any of those files. Now, you may have a different kind of problem. If malware has infected your system, the malware may not have touched any of your system files. So just by going through and checking the integrity of your operating system doesn't necessarily mean that something else isn't creating problems for you elsewhere in the operating system. And in the chat room, of course, reimage your system. Just reimage it. Take your backup data, start from scratch because you've been infected and there's no 100% method of guaranteeing that you would ever be able to remove a piece of malware from your computer. So if you are one of the folks that chose E, perform an integrity scan of operating system files. The 54% of you got that one absolutely correct. Well, in the chat room, I really did not plan this particular question. What part of the A+ exam will require more studying, 801 or 802? Well, I guess it really would depend on which one you know more about. The 801 tends to be more about hardware, but of course, networking is in there. But of the 802 is more operating systems, but there's security pieces and mobile devices in there as well. So you've got kind of a mix. It just depends on your background and where you come from. If you are studying for your exams, I have created also some other tools that may be useful to you so you can remember all of these command lines, all of these different flags that you can use, all of those different prompts that you should know, all of the different interfaces. I have my course notes. My A+ course notes are available both for the 801 exam and the 802 exam. So they cover everything: the hardware, the operating systems, the printers, the security, the networking, the mobile devices, the troubleshooting. It's all in there. I've taken all of these graphics and displays and messages and prompts from my videos, and I put them right into these course notes. You can find out all about these at the professormesser.com/A+CN. I've got the course notes here. Let's see if I'm able to show you what some of these might look like. I've got my 801 course notes on the screen here. There they are. So here's the 801. So things like the chipsets, there's memory information. Here's information about all the connectors. I've got all the displays there. On the 802 side, I've got all the operating system details you need. There's all the command line tools you have to know. There's your system file checker right there. We just went through those pieces. It's all in here with the course notes. So maybe you're good at taking notes during my videos, and that's great. Take your own notes, have them all available to you. But if you're like me and you're not so great about taking notes, I've done all of that for you. And also, of course, the purchase of these course notes goes directly towards keeping the website going. So I want to thank everybody for your ongoing support there. Every single penny from this goes directly into the operations of what we're doing here. So thanks so much for what you do. Thanks for your support of the course notes. And if you want to know more about those, of course, it's professormesser.com/A+CN. So thanks so much for that. Let's do another question then. I've got plenty of questions today. So let's go through. Let's keep the party going. Which one of these would be most applicable for VDI? Notice I just give you these questions that have an abbreviation in there, and you have to figure out what in the world that is. Well, that's on purpose. I want you to, and no talking about this in the chat room. If you know what VDI, keep it to yourself. No answering in the chat room with what it might be for those pieces. There is a number of things that this could be, and I have some options for you. Is most applicable for VDI a home server PC? Is it a video editing workstation? Is it a home theater PC? Is it a virtualization workstation? Is it a thin client, or is it a gaming computer? It's got to be one of those, right? So which one of those would be most applicable for VDI? And go. So you can, of course, answer the question at Socrative.com. Go to the student login and go to the room name Professor Messer, and you can get this as well. I think it's time for a beverage break, isn't it, while you're answering that? It'd be good if I did not mute everything I was doing. So that is one of these questions where you really need to know a couple of different things. I'm first asking you what VDI is, so you have to know what that is. Then you have to apply it. You have to get in there and really figure out what is VDI in this scenario. How can I figure out these questions and how they apply back? One of these questions is very obviously the answer. This is not going to be one of those trick questions. There's going to be absolutely one of these that's going to be your correct answer. So what could it be? VDI is most applicable for certainly one of these. This is really where you want to go to be able to figure out these pieces. So let's see how we've done. We've got about 70 people that have checked already. And let's click how do we do? Well, we have quite a number of people. This is one of those scenarios again where one thing really stands out and everything else is sort of smaller around it. We do have double digits on video editing workstation, home theater PC, 5% thin client, 3% said gaming, 66% of you said a virtualization workstation. So this is one where we really do need to dive into more about what VDI might be. VDI stands for Virtual Desktop Infrastructure. So this is one where you have effectively a thin client that is plugged into a network connection. The thin client probably doesn't have a very high-end graphics card. It most certainly does not. It has a keyboard, it has a mouse, has a network connection. Its CPU probably is not very, very big either. It's not a very high-level fast CPU because this station doesn't need to have all that power associated with it. It is really looking at what's running on a virtual server somewhere else. You have what they call a thin client because it has such a tiny little CPU, has a very little tiny video card inside of it. In fact, the video is probably integrated into the CPU itself. But here is one where we only have to have the barest of minimums to be able to use this, because what we're effectively doing is looking at a remote screen where all the processing is happening somewhere else. So on our screen, it looks and feels like a normal computer to us. It works exactly the same as if we were running a regular PC sitting on our desk. But in actuality, all of the work is being done on a very big monster computer somewhere out in a data center. In fact, it's a big virtualized system that probably all of the thin clients are connecting to. And instead of having multiple systems spread all over the place, we take all that power, put it in one central data center, and all we need is a thin client on our side. So there's really no virtualization really happening on our machine. The VDI is all about the thin client and what's running on that single device. So this would be a very good example of how when we see an answer of virtualization workstation and 69% saying that, and I threw that in there because I knew the V would make you think virtualization, but in reality, this is a thin client when you're talking about a VDI environment. That is exactly what you should be thinking when somebody says VDI. Oh, you got a thin client somewhere. That's what I need to focus on. A virtualization workstation would be a machine where you are virtualizing many different operating systems at the same time on that single device. That is not what's happening with VDI. With VDI, there's a virtualization server somewhere in a data center. The workstation or the device that we have on our computer is the bare minimums, and that's why it's a thin client. So if you were the 5% of people that chose E, then you were absolutely correct. If you were the 95% of you that chose something else, you were a little bit off on that one. Just missed it by that one. But again, you learn something when you get an answer wrong, when you mess up your operating system or you have to repair something that's broken, you're learning something about that system every step along the way. So this is a good one. Now, if you get asked anything on your exam about VDI, you know that's thin client. You're going to get that one absolutely correct. Let's do another one. I like some networking questions, so let's do a networking question. This one is about subnet masks. Question specifically is, if I click the next button here, what is the decimal equivalent of a /16 subnet mask? Again, this is one where it's a two-step process, isn't it? We have to not only know what a subnet mask is, but we have to be able to take this /16 and figure out what a decimal equivalent of a /16 happens to be. I have a number of options for you, of course. Is it 16.0.0.0? Is it 255.0.0.0? Is it 255.255.0.0? Is it 255.255.255.0? Is it 255.255.255.16? It's got to be one of these, right? So go to your Socrative link, log in, be able to do that. That is, and the chat room is not happy with my VDI answer because it was a trick question. It was absolutely not a trick question. You have to read the question. I asked virtualization workstation was the answer there. VDI has nothing to do with doing virtualization on workstations. The workstations aren't doing any virtualization whatsoever. All the virtualization is done on the server. These are it seems like there's semantics in how we are describing these, but there's a very specific categorization of these things that you have to know cold. And if somebody came up to you outside the scope of the A+ exam and they said, hey, we're having a problem with this VDI implementation, the first thing that comes to mind should be thin client. That is exactly where things are. If you're working on VDI, oh, you're doing thin client work. Oh, I'm familiar. Has really very little to do on the back end. Ultimately, there is virtualization happening on the back end, but I had nothing in the answers about a virtualization server. And that's why I guess you could consider that tricky. It's actually more like you have to know that. I guess that's the delineation between, that was a trick question because I didn't know it. It's not a trick question. It was not intending for you to answer that. And the characterization of that is one where you have to know the different nuances of it. Extremely, extremely important when you're getting through that. It was a tricky question, yes, but it was not a trick question. There is a difference. And it's a subtle difference. I'll grant you that. This one, however, can't have any trick to it. I'm asking you a very specific question about a decimal equivalent of a /16 subnet mask. And if you wanted to have a very specific answer, this is why I love computing, because it's all ones and it's all zeros. And every time you run it, it should be exactly the same number of zeros and exactly the same number of ones as the first time. So nothing changes. It's either this very beautiful binary system that is always going to work exactly the same way every time. And there's something very zen about that. And this is a very good example of that because there can only possibly be one decimal equivalent of a /16 subnet mask. How did we do? Why do the numbers look very similar to the last question? This is going to be one of those where we have to figure out, is the 67% of you that answered 255.255.0.0 really the right one? We did get double digits down here, so it's a possibility. Maybe we came out with 255.255.255.16. If we really look at the last question, we go to the person who answered the fewest, and that would be 16.0.0.0. One of these is going to be the right answer, isn't it? So this is really, whenever you see a /16, we're really talking about something called a CIDR block address. This refers to the classless inter-domain routing, CIDR, that we have just colloquially called CIDR. This is a type of notation where we're not typing in decimal numbers anymore. We're more summarizing how many bits happen to be part of a subnet mask, which means that if you see a /16, we're really saying there are 16 bits that are being used as part of the subnet mask. And you may say, why are we talking in bits? We are human beings. We should be talking in 1 through 10 in a decimal format. But in some cases, we do talk in the decimal format with subnet masks. But as you heard, as I was going through all of these answers, 255.255.255.0, it becomes a little bit difficult to get across what we're really saying. If I was trying to find a /16, for example, /16 is a decimal 255.255.0.0. In fact, that's our answer. If we wanted to say, hey, what is the subnet mask on this network? Oh, it's a 255.255.0.0. Or we could just say, that's a /16, which is much easier. And in fact, much more descriptive, because it's one where we can simply type in many applications these days, the IP address /16, and it understands, oh, I know exactly what that happens to be in decimal. Now, of course, if we look at this, we were to write out 255.255.0.0 in a binary form, take the decimal and convert it over. And I have a video on how to convert from decimal to binary and binary back to decimal. And you can see the binary is 8 ones, 8 ones, 8 zeros, 8 zeros. So the number of ones there, if you count, is the 8 and 16. There are 16 ones there, which means that would be a /16. If we take the decimal subnet mask 255.255.255.0, we see that if we spell it all out in binary, if we calculate it out in binary, there are 24 ones in that particular subnet mask, and that's why we call it a /24. So you will need to know at least the very high level of how that particular combination works. Certainly these very common subnet masks of the /8, the /16, and the /24 will be very important for you to know as part of your A+ certification. And if we go back, in this particular case, the 66% of you that said a /16 is a 255.255.0.0 is absolutely correct. So there you go. That is one where it really does come in handy to be able to do that conversion and make that happen. And we're back on the right side of things, aren't we? When 66% of you got that one absolutely correct. There is absolutely classless subnetting on the 801 exam. Make sure that you download your exam objectives in the networking section of the 220-801 and understand exactly what those might be. If you haven't downloaded the exam objectives, you should absolutely do that before doing any more studying with this exam. Go out to the Google machine, type in CompTIA exam objectives, download the A+ objectives, make sure you have those. You should not walk into your exam without having used that as your primary study source. It doesn't matter what book you get, doesn't matter what videos you watch, you have to get that particular piece of information regardless. You have to go get those CompTIA exam objectives. Very, very important. Let's do another question. Let's shift gears into sort of the mobile world and talk about laptops. And the question is, which of these would best describe a laptop system board? Obviously, laptop system boards different, I guess, than other system boards, aren't they? Because we're asking about some very specific characteristics about that. So let's figure out what those would be. Would a laptop system board be described as something having DIMM slots? Would it be a proprietary form factor? Would it be field upgradable? Would it be a modular hardware subsystem? Or would it have multiple CPU sockets? So one of these would best describe a laptop system board. This is when you get into one of those scenarios with the exam where they're asking you for something that is the best. there could be multiple answers here. Again, a question that is tricky, but perhaps not one that is a trick question, because it should absolutely jump out at you. The answer, if you know the material, all of these questions on the exam will be very, very obvious when you start working with them. Which one would be the best description? Which would best describe? Which would be the best thing to do first if you had to do this type of troubleshooting? Those are very common questions to get on the exam. So which one of these would best describe a laptop system board? Certainly we work with laptops a lot. What we don't work a lot with is what's inside the laptop. And we need to know that, especially on the 802 exam, because there is an entire section on the exam dealing with laptops. So we need to go through and understand what these might be. No answering in the chat room. Go to your Socrative page and go to the Professor Messer room. If you're there already, obviously you've got the question. If you're somebody just joining in, you can do that. Obviously, if you're watching this on replay, you can't really participate live. These questions will not pop up in the chat room. Sorry about that. There won't be anything for you to answer, but you could follow along on the replay and see how you did. Make a note, and you can see if you get it right along with everyone else. Well, let's see how we did on this one. Let's click the How Do We Do button. How did we do? How do you do? There you go. 10% said DIMM slots. 69%, again, a big number, said proprietary form factor. 5% said field upgradable. 16% said modular hardware subsystems. That would make sense. I'm going to quit this right here. And we've got 1% said multiple CPU sockets. So we've got kind of a mix. I guess we've got two double digits. We've got the proprietary form factor and modular hardware subsystems. Well, one thing about laptop system boards that is obvious across the board is that they are very proprietary. You've got this computer that is being fit into a very, very small space. And the system boards for these laptop systems are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. It's becoming more and more difficult to replace the parts in the systems. Now that almost everything is on the system board, this is a system board from a laptop. You can see that it's oddly shaped. It's not a square or a rectangle that you're used to seeing on a desktop system, because you have to put it into this small form factor that has a battery. It might have an optical drive. You can see now why we've thrown out the optical drives, because we don't need them anymore and they take up a lot of space in our mobile devices. So you don't see a lot of optical drives in your laptops anymore because you don't have a lot of room. You could use that room for a battery. Instead of having a spinning disk that you're not using hardly ever, we can use that space for something else. You've got to fit storage in there. There's CPU, there's cooling that has to happen. There's a lot of things going on there. So that is a very, very good example of really working with the system board and having a laptop system board. Notice it's not very field upgradable. There's not a lot you can do with the systems and the changing of things. You can't really swap a CPU out very well in these particular systems. So there's not a lot you can do along those lines either. This is one where I think it makes sense if you're working on a laptop, and that's why if you are working on a laptop, you got to get a very specific system board if you're going to be replacing it. It has to be exactly the right model, has to be for exactly that system if you're going to be swapping it out, because that's when it has to fit perfectly. Other system boards from other laptops obviously are not going to work properly along those lines. Well, that's so let's see how we did with that particular question. If we go back to see our Socrative numbers there, we can see that we have proprietary form factor. The 68% of you that answered B would be absolutely correct. And laptops don't generally use DIMMs. They use SO-DIMMs, so that would not be the correct answer. Very rarely field upgradable, hardly anything in a laptop these days. Not very modular with its hardware subsystems. You get what's on this board. And if it's not on this board, you don't get anything. You have some things that you can do along those lines and work with, but generally speaking, you've got very little that you can really work with on these systems to make any type of changes. That's why we tend to have those express card interfaces on a laptop that are useful if you ever want to add capabilities or change capabilities, because you can't do it on the system board. You can't make any type of changes whatsoever. On those Socrative answers, we also, the last one, multiple CPU sockets. Very rarely do you see multiple CPU sockets on a laptop. That's just more power and more heat. And those are two things that don't work very well inside of a laptop form factor. This is where you really do have a challenge when you're working with those. So if you were the folks that answered B, proprietary form factor, absolutely correct with that. So let's take a moment, by the way, when you start working with the 802 exam and doing things with that exam, one of the things I mentioned is that you could very possibly not only get your multiple choice questions, but you may be asked to perform tasks on the exam. CompTIA has a nice video that explains these performance-based questions where you have to do matching or fill in the blank, or you have to be able to put things in a particular ascending or descending order, or they just might plop you down at a command prompt and say, perform a task. And you have to perform that task at that command prompt and make sure that it's going to work. Without having any type of hands-on, this might be a bit of a challenge. And fortunately, my friends at GTS Learning have created their GTS Learning Freestyle, which are online labs that are available in a live system. They talk about virtualization. Everything they're doing in this environment is one where all of the systems are already running in your browser. So I've got the Freestyle Labs, in fact, running in my browser right now. I just started up one of the A+ exams that deals with storage management. And I could go through and look at the storage management exercises that we have here. You've got these 3 systems that have been set up, and these 3 systems have different labs you can simply step through. Managing disks. Here's what you do step by step. They give you screenshots and step-by-steps of exactly what you need to do to perform these particular tasks, and then they give you systems that you can work on. Here is a Windows server, a domain controller in this environment. Here's a Windows 7 device. And notice I'm just clicking on these devices, and I've now got a remote desktop session that I can run to these devices and work with. Look at that response time, because I'm effectively a thin client. I'm not running these operating systems out on my machine. They're running somewhere else in the cloud. All I have to do is be able to click a button and access them. And I don't even have to load any extra software. I'm running this in HTML5 on the latest version of Firefox. I could run this on any of the latest browsers. It works great. And that's HTML5. If you aren't running one of the latest browsers, you can, of course, run this as a Java client as well. HTML5, much more seamless, and having Java run in a browser, probably not the best idea from a security perspective these days anyway. So from here, I can step through all of these exercises, and I can either just click back and forth to the exercise where it says, go to this server. In fact, let's do the first one here. Go to this server. We want to go to computer and select manage. So you would just perform the same task there. You would go to these devices and click computer and click manage and step through the exact pieces they do. Okay, what's next on this? Now we need to, on set network location, choose work. Okay, let's do that piece. So now I can just go through the entire lab. Now, maybe you already have something like this set up at home yourself. You already have your own virtual system set up. You're running this in virtualization. You have Windows XP and Windows Vista and Windows 7 already running, and you have a pretty good idea of how to step through these. Well, maybe this isn't for you, or maybe you would like to have exercises that step you through this piece. And these are exercises you can try for an hour absolutely free. Just go out to the GTS Learning website at professormesser.com/freestyle labs, and you not only can try it for free for an hour, you get a much discounted price over what you would have if you were using this on the GTS Learning site. So you're getting a discount just because you're following my link to get there. And I think it's $99 for a year that not only includes these labs, but also includes all of their online books and their ebooks, which are right there within your Freestyle account. And they've also got some sample exams for you to try as well. You can see all of that and give it a shot. professormesser.com/freestyle labs and try it for yourself. And I want to thank the folks at GTS Learning for supporting what we're doing here as well. It's very much appreciated. Well, let's do another question, shall we? We're going through these pieces, and I've got plenty of questions for you. This one was so long, this question, that I had to write it out in a smaller typeface just so we could fit everything on there. But on the 802 exam, there is a lot of questions about mobile devices. And so I have a mobile device question for you. One of your employees has misplaced their mobile phone. A GPS check shows that it's outside of your control. What is the best next step? Remember those questions I told you that might be asking you what the best next step would be? This is one of those. One of these answers would be the best next step. And I've got some options for you. Is it assign a new mobile phone in the MDM? Is it to contact the authorities? Is it to travel to the last known GPS coordinates of the phone? Is it to perform a remote wipe? Or is it to contact the mobile carrier and report the phone as stolen? So this is one where you are now the administrator. You've been put into the task of managing these mobile devices. This employee has come to you and says, I can't find my phone. You go to the GPS. Oh, we'll find it. We'll go to the GPS view of the world. It's somewhere. Hey, were you here? No, I have no idea why my phone is in that location. It's obviously outside of our control. What do we do next? And now you have to answer. If you think you know the answer, go to Socrative.com, go to the room name Professor Messer, and you can answer that question. So there's definitely going to be questions about that. The A+ exam might ask you questions about Android. It may ask you questions about iOS, and it may ask you questions about Windows Phone. All of those are on and listed in some way on the A+ exam. The focus is iOS and Android. In fact, the Windows Phone stuff I think is mentioned in passing. Almost everything is Android and iOS, at least on the 801. Maybe this will change. Maybe we'll have new stuff on the 900 series. Who knows? But right now, we just deal with Android and iOS. You know those pieces. You'll have it down very well. So as the administrator, let's see how we did. What is your task as the administrator? 75% of you jumped right out and said perform a remote wipe. 16% said contact the mobile carrier, report the phone as stolen. 6% said contact the authorities. 2% said assign a new mobile phone. 1% said travel to the last known GPS coordinates of the phone. Obviously, somebody wants their phone back. This, by the way, C is never the right answer. See, and I know we've seen both. We've seen stories in the past of people who follow the Find My Phone. They got their phone back. But we've also seen stories, unfortunately, in the news where somebody has tried to find their phone and they ended up losing their life. A phone is not worth any trouble. And it's so simple to replace a phone these days. Never, never, never. Unless you know you're in control of that location of where it happens to be. Oh, I left it. It's in my car, or it's at my house, or it's at the library. Something like that, obviously, you can go back. But the phone is now at some strange building that I've never been to. That phone's gone, which means we need to protect the data that was on the phone. We need to make sure nobody gains access to any of that information. And these MDMs that's mentioned in this question is a mobile device manager, which allows you to do things like remotely wipe what's on that device. In fact, the mobile device manager effectively can do anything with this phone. They can enable or disable different features. They can remove applications. They can add applications. They can do anything to the phone, including find the phone in a big map of the world, and of course, wipe everything that is on the phone. You pop messages up on the phone. If you found this phone, call this number. Maybe that's where you start, but I didn't give you that as a best next step. You had to choose from the list of things I had, and since this phone is outside of your control, and because this phone is somewhere we have no idea where it is, we click a button, the phone's wiped. All the data is cleared off of it, and now we can go to the next option, which is to assign you a new phone. And that is the key, as you're seeing in the chat room. It is outside of your control. And that is the real key to this one, is that if we're not in control anymore, then obviously we need to wipe and restart. And this is something that your organization, a corporation, a company knows that this is going to happen. You're going to have these things happen all the time. So that's one where you really do have to just take it as an asset that is now gone to the wind, and we'll get you another mobile phone. So let's now focus on or change our focus to a different kind of question. This one deals more with something called defragmentation. And the question I have for you is, which of these issues would be resolved through defragmentation? And I've got a couple of options for you. Would it be lengthy file access times? Would it be no boot device found? Maybe that's what's resolved. Would the MBR missing be resolved through defragmentation? Or would bad drive sectors be resolved through defragmentation? One of these obviously is going to be the best answer for this particular question. And you need to answer the question by going to Socrative.com and be able to go to the room name Professor Messer. This is one where you have to understand a lot of these utilities that you'll be using in an operating system. So this is absolutely an 802 question, a 22802. This is one where defragmentation is a significant part. In fact, your operating system, you may not even realize it, your operating system may be doing this in a schedule on your system now, and you may not even realize that it's happening. So there's a little hint for you. Maybe some of that might help you answering the question. If you think you know the answer, go to Socrative.com and answer. Let's see how we did with this one. Wow, 92% of you said lengthy file access times. 9% of you said bad drive sectors. B said no boot device found, and C said MBR missing. We know it's not MBR. We know how to fix a master boot record problem, don't we? We've got that one down at this point. No boot device found. We kind of found and messed around with our BIOS settings earlier, so 0%, we did learn something there. 90% of you said lengthy file access times, though. So the question would be, would this really be resolved through defragmentation? So let's find out what defragmentation is. This takes these files, because when files are written to a drive, they are written, a hard drive, they are written just any space that might be available. And these spaces don't generally sit next to each other. They could be scattered all over the drive. Well, this allows us to store the file, but when we need to retrieve the file, we have to go to all of those spaces on the drive to be able to gather all those files. And we've got an arm on the drive that is spinning, and it has to go back and forth all the time, constantly, to gather up all of the different pieces of that file so that you can then work with the file. This is something that we would like to be able to make easier. What if we could have the file all in one place? All of those pieces would be together, which means that they are contiguous. I've gotten emails where people have said, you said continuous wrong. That's because this word is contiguous, which is a real word. It means that all of these pieces are now completely together with those pieces. This is not something you would do with SSDs. It's not necessary if you're running in a storage device that is completely solid state, because you don't have a delay time as you're gathering up the pieces of those files. It is one where it may even still have some fragmentation, but it doesn't matter because you can access all of those files immediately. The access is not one where we have a spinning drive and we have to wait for the data to come around. We have to move the actuator arm to where the data is going to be on that track. In fact, your system probably won't allow you to defrag an SSD even if you tried to do it. There's usually a graphical version of the defragmentation in your drive properties. You can run it from the command line by running the name defrag, and it will pop up the defragmentation utility as well. And you may find in your task scheduler, you already have a task there, a weekly task that is done. If your system's turned on, it's probably at 2 or 3 in the morning or something. It will go through the defragmentation. There is, by the way, a contingent of people that say defragmentation doesn't solve any problems on hard drives. It doesn't make things faster. And I'm sure we could have a physics episode, I guess, where we talk about the physics of where files are. And it will improve the performance of files. Whether you see the improvement with your human eye would be a different thing entirely, of course. So that is one where it becomes very useful to be able to have this defragmentation there, especially if you have a lot of very large files and you're constantly reading and writing to your drive. This can indeed improve the read-write performance of your system, and it's done that as well on mine there. Now, if you're somebody who is watching this for your continuing education units and you would like to get that continuing education certification from me, you would simply go to my website at professormesser.com. There's a contact us at the link. You would put your name, your information in there, and tell me that the secret word is defrag. And if you put defrag in there, I'll know that you watched at least this part of the presentation, and I'll be able to send you an information that says, yes, indeed, you were able to get that, to watch this particular session, and I'll send you the continuing education units with that. Now, if you were one of the people that went to this question and you answered A, lengthy file access times, that is exactly what defragmentation would be able to cover on your particular system. So that should help you if you're getting longer access times and you have a lot of these systems that you're working with. That would be a very good way to work with it. Well, we've come to the end of our first hour. Of course, we're going to go for another hour after this. We'll take some phone calls and answer any questions from the chat room and elsewhere. Of course, if you're leaving us, you can always follow me on Twitter, professormesser.com/Twitter, and my YouTube channel, professormesser.com/YouTube. It's kind of hard to see with my big head in the way there. If you're interested in those course notes I mentioned, you can learn more about those at professormesser.com/A+CN. for A+ course notes. They're also on the main screen of my website. There's pull-down menus for the A+ side of my site. You can click on the course notes from there as well. My thanks to GTS Learning. If you want to know more about those freestyle labs, you get your free hour of lab time on their 802 program. You can go to the professormesser.com/freestyle labs. And of course, I do a study group for A+, for Network Plus, and for Security Plus every month. You can see the calendar for that at professormesser.com/calendar. One thing to keep in mind is normally I will do these on a Saturday at 12 noon. In this particular case, next Saturday we'll not be having a study group. Instead, the Wednesday after that, we're doing a very unusual Wednesday session of my Network Plus study group. So feel free to join us on the middle of the week and see how well you do with your Network Plus knowledge. I want to thank everybody for joining us this time. I wouldn't be able to do it without you. We'll see you next time on the study group. Stick around for the second hour, everyone. We'll see you on the other side. Thanks, everyone. That covers quite a bit of content in a very short period of time. Where is the picture of me that I want to put up? There it is. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the second hour. I do not have the phone lines up and running, but when I do, that is where the phone lines will be. I just have to remember where those are if I type things in properly on my side and be able to talk while I'm doing something completely different at the same time. Which seems simple, doesn't it? Why shouldn't I be able to do that? Let's host a show. Let's call a show. Let's start a show. And let me call in. And I've now started the show, but you can't hear me because I don't have anything there. Let's click a few buttons and make that happen, shall we? Beep, 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 beep. And it asks me a thing. Yes.
Please enter your show number.
Okay. My show number.
Enter your 6-digit.
All right.
You are now in the host
I'm
room.
in the host room. Okay. So we've already got people calling in. Yeah, that did go fast, didn't it? Let me pop up my chat room so we can see what's going on. You can find out all the next study groups and everything on the calendar at professormesser.com/calendar. It's all on the calendar. Plus, every single page of my website on the right sidebar is also the calendar. You can't go wrong. Just visit a page on my site and you're probably going to find the calendar. Well, we've already got folks calling in, so let's waste no more time with me talking about calendars, and let's go to the 702 area code. Are you there? No, it's the 661 area code. Are you there, caller? Maybe it is the 702. It is the 702. Are you there, caller? I hear me. Do I hear a caller?
Hello?
Hello. Hi, who's there?
Hi, sir. My name is Susam. How are you?
Hello, Yusuf. Good to have you call in. Thank you for calling. What can we do for you?
Thank you. I have two questions for you.
Okay.
The first one, can I take the two exams in one day? It's really the same day?
Right.
This is the first. The second, how many time for the update for the new exam?
Okay.
You said before you have 6 months.
Yep. And
Yeah.
so let me answer both of those for you. We've got
the next 6 exams.
okay. So there's two things there. We're interested in, of course. Let's take the 801, 802 exam. This would apply to the next series of A+ exams. The first question is, do I take both of these in the same day? Can I take them separately? Should I take them separately? How far apart can I take them? It's a very common question. And the 801 and 802 exam, you could take them on the same day. There are people that do take them on the same day. I recommend you never take them on the same day because they contain such a vastly different amount of information. The 801 exam, very focused on hardware. The 802 exam, very focused on software and operating systems. There's not a lot of overlap between them, which means it makes a lot of sense to study very focused on the 801 exam and then study later for the 802. So the question then also becomes, how can I or should I take these two exams? How far apart can I take them? And you can take them as far apart as you would like until the exams are retired. And that goes into the second question you mentioned, which was we're having these exams retire here eventually. When they announce the next series of exams, I'm just assuming they're calling them the 900 series because the previous was the 600, the 700, the 800. I'm just assuming we'll have the 900 series. They might call them something different. If you're watching this in the future and like, what's he talking about? I think it's the 900. It might not be. The 900 series exams, when they announce that, they usually give 6 months before they retire the previous series. So the 800 series exams, if they announce today that the 900 series exams are available, you've still got 6 months. So you could take one of the exams today and you could wait 6 months to take the other one. But you have to make sure you take them both before that series of exams is retired. If you took the first one now and you didn't take the second one and they retired the ones now and we've started the 900 series only, you would have to start over from the beginning, and nobody wants that. So make sure that if you're planning to separate these out, that you at least get both of them to be able to work with that, which is, I think, most important part with that. Does that make sense, Yusuf?
No, thanks. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for calling. There's that's probably a great question to ask because it's one of the most popular questions I get on the site, which is taking those exams. And it's really about strategy, isn't it? You want to be able to have the most possible pass rate that you can when you walk into that room. And I think the best possible way to do that would be to study everything for the 801 and go in and take the 801 exam. Get that done, then study everything for the 802 and go in and take the 802 exam and pass the 802. You could take them in the other order, of course. You could take the 802 first and then the 801. Why not? You could certainly do that. It's up to whatever you know. And as I mentioned in the study group, you really don't know which one is going to be harder for anybody. I had a big background in software and working with operating systems, running Windows, but not as strong a background in the hardware piece of it. So when I took my exams, the piece that dealt with Windows, that was in my wheelhouse. I was an MCSE. I knew everything there was to know about the Windows for this particular exam. And then we got to the hardware. I'm like, wow, look at all these memory types. There's a lot of CPUs that I didn't know about. I need to figure that piece out. So for me, the software one was much easier. Other people have been repairing computers for a long time. They got the hardware down cold. Maybe they weren't working with the operating system as much. So that's one of those challenges and being able to make that happen. Let's go to the phone lines. We have the 954 area code in South Florida. Are you there, caller?
Yes, hello.
Hey, what's your name?
Matt.
Hey, Matt, are you indeed in South Florida?
Yes, I am.
Oh, lived in Pembroke Pines, Miramar area for years. That's where I met Mrs. Professor Messer. Was in Miami.
Oh, wow.
I missed the area. So thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
I just have a question regarding what you have said earlier, stating the exam policies with the 800 might, eventually moving on to the 900 series.
Right.
And if so, if you were to just get recently certified with the 801 and 802, would you have to take the 901 and 902 again when they come out to have a newer certification for the CompTIA A+?
Right. You don't have to go through all of this, and then tomorrow suddenly a new exam comes out, and everything you just worked for would be completely wasted time. Fortunately, CompTIA doesn't work that way. If you were to take the 801 and the 802 and pass those exams, you are immediately A+ certified, and that A+ certification is good for 3 years, regardless of what happens to the exam. They could come out with 20 different exam versions in that 3-year period. You're still certified. You do not have to take another exam ever. Quite honestly, if you don't want to ever take another exam to keep that certification valid, you can do that. You could
continuing, yeah.
Exactly, the continuing education units.
Correct?
Exactly, correct. The other
So
piece.
it doesn't matter then.
It really doesn't. And in fact, the certification you get doesn't say what version of the exam you took. All it says is you're A+ certified, which means if you're sitting in a room with somebody who's taken the 900 series exam and you're taking the 800 series exam, because there will be a 6-month time frame where you could take either, and you both pass, you will get exactly the same certification, just the names will be different
no
on
one
it.
will know.
And nobody has
Yeah.
any idea. Some employers are very specific, though, and they would like you to take the newer version of the exam, but that's a very, I found, unusual circumstance for that particular thing to happen. But you may want to check with your employer to make sure that they don't care. But if you're looking for a position, you're looking for jobs, all they want to know is, are you A+ certified? Yes, I am. And off you go. It doesn't matter which version of the exam, because you have to upgrade the exam. You have to keep your exam or your certification current, and they know that you have to keep it updated every 3 years. You're going to maintain your knowledge in that particular set of materials for as long as you have that certification valid. So they know you'll keep it up to date, because if you don't, then you obviously won't have the certification any longer.
All right, awesome.
Well, that's great. Thanks for calling us. Any other questions we can answer for you?
That's the only question I had to ask, and I appreciate your answer.
Thanks for calling. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you very much. Take care.
South Florida. I miss the pastelitos and the Cuban coffee in the afternoon. In fact, you'll notice on the website, CompTIA calls their exam going away as a retirement. They are retiring. When they come out with the 900 series exam, they will retire the 800 series exam. When you pass your certification, it's good for 3 years, at which point it will expire. So that's the difference between the retirement of an exam and the expiration of a certification. So keep those things in mind with those. In the chat room, they're already answering the questions before I have a chance. Somebody was asking the difference between a 20-pin motherboard and the 24-pin motherboard. And indeed, Robert's right on the money. The 20-pin is definitely the older one. 20-pin actually only supports about 350 watts. Wow. It's right on the money with that one. It's right there. Yeah, you got more wattage. You can pump through the 24-pin. In fact, there was a motherboard I had that was a 20-pin motherboard. It was a 24-pin motherboard, and I had a 20-pin power, and that particular motherboard supported that as long as I wasn't using multiple CPUs and other things on the motherboard. So you can sometimes mix and match. You have to check the you went to Versailles for love that place. Man, I need me some pollo right now. Let's go back to the phones before I get just incredibly hungry. And let's go to the 630 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
My name is Sayed.
Hi, Sayed. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
I took my 801, 802. I took the 802 first, then I took 801.
Okay.
For some reason, I came to the very end and did not get success.
On the 801.
So in 802, I came like 170 points. Then I fell in there. And 801, I came to five points. Then I lost that exam also. So I'm taking both of them again now.
Okay. Did you say you missed the 801 by 5 points?
Yeah.
Oh, so close. I can't believe that.
Almost like 640 something.
Yeah, very close.
I don't remember. So I'm taking, now I just chopped down. Now I'm taking 801 first, 802 next. So I'm planning to take my 801 in 20 days, around 20 days.
Great.
Yeah, so I'm using exam cram and CompTIA plus textbook question answers, watching your videos a little bit, and your pop-up quiz, and some, what do you call, when you go to CompTIA website, they give you trial test questions.
Yep.
That's what I'm doing so far.
Perfect. So what's your question?
So, in these exams, they always have so many questions about SOHO routers.
Right.
I always have hard time to understand this IP stuff.
Okay. In fact, there's a big section on the exam that's all about SOHO. It's all about small office, home office. And this is obviously a big thing because we have so many people out there in the world today that are doing so much in the small office, home office environments. We're not even going into a big office anymore for some of us. We sit in a single room. Well, mine is definitely a small office, home office. I sit in a single room and I communicate with everybody outside of what we're doing. And so there's a big section on the A+ exam about SOHO, and it's about setting up SOHO routers, and it's about setting up SOHO printers and all-in-one printers and those particular pieces of it. I would highly recommend, especially since you're now going through it the second time, you have an advantage. You already know the format of the exam. You got a pretty good idea of the types of things they ask. I would highly recommend you grab the exam objectives from CompTIA's website if you don't have those already. Do you have those, Syed?
Yeah,
okay.
I downloaded from there.
Perfect. Use those as a big checklist. Use them as a master checklist, especially on the section dealing with the SOHO, the small office, home office piece, because that's where you need to know exactly what are they going to ask me. And your comment earlier was a good one, which was they're going to ask me questions about networking in there. What specifically are they going to go through the process of asking me about? So let me drill down into my exam objectives. I know you can't really see this on your side, but your question specifically dealt with section 2.6, which was install, configure, let me show the stream, install, configure, and deploy a SOHO wireless/wired router using appropriate settings. And it seems kind of broad when they have that up there, like, wow, I need to install, configure, and deploy a router using settings. What could that possibly be? But fortunately, the A+ exam objectives break down everything you should know about configuring and deploying one of these. You need to know about MAC filtering, the channels, the port forwarding, port triggering, SSID broadcast, wireless encryption, firewall, DHCP, on or off, DMZ, if we go to the next page, NAT, WPS, and basic QoS. There are a lot of different configuration options inside of a SOHO router, but the only ones you need to know about are the ones on that list. And it's a pretty extensive list by itself, but if you look at some of the SOHO routers these days, there's a lot more things that you can do with it. Just ignore that piece. You need to know about these specific features. So go through this list. If you know everything there is to know about MAC filtering, you can check that one off. You might even have a SOHO router at your home or at your small office or something you're using connected to your internet connection. You could go in and look at the MAC filtering for this as well. And here's a little tip for everybody who's listening in. A lot of these manufacturers have emulators for these wireless devices. So you could find a Linksys emulator out there on the internet that brings up the front end of a Linksys wireless device, but it's not a real Linksys wireless device. You can log in as an admin and go through all of the emulation and see where all of these different options are inside of that remote device. Well, let's turn on MAC filtering and see how it's done on this Linksys router. Log into the Linksys router, go to the MAC filtering section, add a MAC address to it, and now you've done the MAC filtering. Check that one off of your list. Now let's do channels. Where do I configure channels on this Linksys router and go through the process? So even if you don't have the physical device, there are plenty of resources you can find out there on the internet that are probably going to help you out with that. Does that make sense, Syed?
Yeah, understandable. As soon as I left the exam, they gave me a papers of topics which I didn't did very well. So I'm gonna the last 2 weeks I'm gonna concentrate on that. And I think I did the mistake with that. Begin with, I think I took JKO 801. I think the actual exam was 22801, but I took the JKO 801. So that's why it's kind of
yeah, this is an important delineation. Is there's two different exam types that CompTIA offers, and you may see this when you're signing up for the exam. For those of you that are not part of a CompTIA academic partner, which is a school or a learning center that has a partnership with CompTIA, they provide a discounted set of vouchers and exams that you can take because it's built into the class that you happen to be taking. If you're not part of a CompTIA academic partner, you should not be taking the JK0 exams. So the JK0s are the ones for those academic partners. If you're part of that school, you can ask, hey, are we part of the academic? Do I take the JK0? It'll be very obvious to you that you do. The problem's going to be the exams are exactly the same. The 801 exam for the JK0 and the 801 exam you take are exactly the same. They are just separated out for CompTIA, keeping those two things separate and being able to manage them as separate entities. In fact, I understand that if you take one, the JK0, and then you take the other one as the non-academic partner exam, I believe it counts, but people who are in that weird scenario would probably want to confirm that with CompTIA.
Yeah, I think this is JK0 801. I think I took that, and that's like a kind of academic level A+ exam. That's why I didn't get success.
No, it's exactly the same exam. So you would have done just as well on the regular exam that you would have taken. It's really just more for keeping track of the different pieces. The material covered on the exam is exactly the same between them.
So I'm gonna just do whatever I was doing for the JK01.
Yes.
But this time I'm 220 801, 220 802, and I need the certification big time because for the jobs security.
It sounds like you've got exactly the right things in mind, and you're doing exactly the right things to study for this. And if you're going through the list on the exam objectives and something's not quite right, refer to your book. All of my videos are in exactly the same order as the exam objectives. Watch those videos. You'll do absolutely fine, I'm sure of it.
So my voucher is valid till 1 year, so I can still, reschedule if I feel not I'm kind of ready.
Yeah, I think the vouchers that you can get, generally most vouchers are good for a year, but it will say on the voucher, there are some vouchers you can get that are good for less than a year. And I think it's a 24-hour, maybe the chat room can back me on this one. I think you can reschedule your exam if you're able to do it within 24 hours of taking it. So if you're going in on Wednesday and it's Monday, you're thinking, I'm just not sure I'm going to be ready Wednesday or Tuesday morning, you can call and change it to a later date. I think you can even do that online. You can go online. Someone was doing it over the weekend. And they were in my chat room. They goes, I just went online and I just changed it. I was not ready Monday to be able to take this exam. Absolutely. Make sure you go in when you're ready to take it.
Thank you, Professor. I bought that study material from your website that comes with the PDF.
Great. Thank you, Syed. I appreciate that. And as I mentioned earlier, it is remarkable how well that goes towards maintaining the site and keeping these going. I really do appreciate it.
Definitely, if I pass my A+ exam, the credit goes to you and me.
I think you've got all of the right materials to be able to do that, and I'm very interested to hear how things go when you get that exam done.
Okay, thank you, Professor.
Thanks, Syed. Appreciate the call. It's a very common thing. There were some exams, not the CompTIA exams, but I took some exams. There was one exam I was taking one time. It was on cabling, network cabling. There once was an exam certification for network cabling called the CNX. I took that exam 3 times before I was able to pass it. Drove me crazy. But I can answer some questions about cabling, I guarantee you. Let's go to the 484 area code. What's your name, caller?
Hello, my name is Scott.
Hey, Scott. Thanks for calling.
How are you, Professor? How are you, Professor Master? It's good to finally talk to you.
Good for you to call. Good for you to be able to talk to me as well.
Yeah, thank you. I've been watching your videos for quite some time. I guess about a year or two. I'm happy to tell you that thanks to you, and plus a course I took at nearby Delaware County Community College, I got my A+ certification taken care of. And I'm proud to say I got that done on the first try.
Fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. My question has to do with finding that first job.
Yes.
And just to give you a little background about me, I'm trying to transition away from teaching. I've been teaching for, about 13, 14 years, and I think it's time for me to move on to to something else, and IT is what I chose.
Okay.
And I've got the certs, like I told you, and I'm working towards my Net Plus, but I've sort of submitted my resumes. I've done volunteer work at an organization nearby where I live in Philadelphia.
Okay.
where they actually refurbish PCs and either sell them in their secondhand store or they donate them to charities or other nonprofit organizations.
Nice.
But other than that, I have been having a terrible time landing that first job. And I just wanted to know if you have any suggestions as to what I can do, to in fact land that first job.
I have a couple. And this is something I'm seeing, of course, more of. We have certainly people that are they're in school, they're in college for the very first time, they're getting out of school and they're trying to find a job. And the world is a relatively open place to go because you got a blank slate. And I think for some reason, people are kind of expecting the blank slate. But the folks that are in transition, you're moving from one career to another, you're effectively starting over in many ways with that piece and starting over in something that in some ways is not exactly relative to what you were doing previously. Now, there have been cases on my website where there's been dramatic differences, but even somebody, and there have been people on my website that are truckers right now that are traveling, they're in their truck, they're driving place to place, and they want to get into IT. And what I tell them is you have an amazing amount of knowledge in transportation, in the industry and what it's doing. You may be able to leverage that in things that are working in IT, because one of the biggest challenges in IT anywhere in the world is being able to link or somehow associate technology back to what the original goal of the organization is. Because if you are a company that transports and has truckers, you've got an IT department, but the computers have nothing to do with the job at hand. Same thing in teaching, same thing for educational facilities, is that your goal is to make people smarter, to teach them the things that they need to be able to move on with their life. It really has nothing to do with computers, I guess, maybe unless they're learning about computers. But if you take something like a K through 12 in the United States, you've got a very large population of students, and you've got an IT department for all of these schools that somehow has to take technology and somehow turn that into something that makes sense for the organization, along with all the other challenges of budgets and managing the processes that occur in those types of environments. So your knowledge, especially for such a long period of time in that particular realm, can really serve you if you start applying those from a technology perspective. That's, of course, only one side of it, but I would think that you would be more attractive to an IT department at an educational facility than you would to somewhere that's doing transportation. That's just some feedback I can give about those. And you may want to focus on those because it happens to be in your wheelhouse. You really happen to know about that particular part of the world. But you also have to do all the other things, and it's even harder when you're transitioning out of one role or one career and into another career, is you have to start making new contacts. In your old career or existing career, you've got a number of people that you know, but in your case, they're probably educators, and they're people that manage educators and not necessarily people that have anything to do with the IT department in those educational facilities. So now you have to start hanging out with the IT people and find out where they are. Fortunately, especially in educational and college and universities, a lot of those organizations like to attend user group meetings because they like to talk with what other people are doing. You for some reason, ironically, educational IT departments are perhaps the ones that have the biggest challenge trying to get training. And because of that, they like to find every possibility, every place they can go to learn in other ways. I know I can't go to a formal training class so much, but I can go to user group meetings. So check the Cisco user group meetings, the Microsoft user group meetings, the VMware user group meetings. I guarantee you there's going to be not only educational people that are there, but from all over different types of vertical markets all over your area. So there could be transportation, manufacturing, you've got customer service, you've got retail, you've got education. They're across the board.
Are you still there?
Yeah, I am still here.
Okay.
So that's
okay,
where
my computer just went.
Gotcha. Well,
then you just cut out. I just wanted to make sure.
You can always check the replay as well. So I think that's another way that you could go and start focusing on not just the technical side of things, which will of course be important as you change careers, but I think you should also focus perhaps even more so on the people networking side of things, if that makes sense.
I think that makes sense, but could you be a little more specific in that area? I mean, I'm not sure exactly what to do there.
Well, I was referring specifically to going to user group meetings and finding places where they are.
Okay.
Meetup.com is a great place to go. In fact, if you got a meetup.com in your area, you're just finding there's not a lot of user group meetings, there's not a lot of people who are meeting, go to Meetup and make your own meeting. Just have a technical propeller head meeting, an IT professional of a particular area meeting, where it's just a casual, go to a coffee place, sit down, have coffee, maybe have a topic of the month, and just talk about it. What are you doing with virtualization? What are you doing? Microsoft Windows 10 is coming out. What are you doing with Windows 10? How are you handling all these mobile upgrades that are going on? What's your mobile device manager that you're using? You know, those types of things you just want to soak in. And that's a really good place to meet people. And quite honestly, meeting people is one of the best ways to get that next job.
Right. I'm definitely finding that to be the case. So, yeah, I'll definitely take those suggestions and run with it.
Sounds great. Scott, thank you so much for calling.
Oh, thank you. And again, I just, would like you to know that you're a huge part of me getting the certifications, and I really appreciate all that you do.
That's great to hear, Scott. And please let us keep me updated with how things are going. We'll follow up and see what to do next.
Okay, will do. And again, thank you very much.
Take care. Bye-bye. There's a lot of opportunity there on the meeting people side. We don't seem to do enough of it. And people, for some reason, think that IT people are non-social people that stay in their basement and don't do anything. Have you ever been to a Microsoft convention or trade show? There's not enough alcohol at the bar for some reason. They are everywhere. There's nothing non-social about technical people at all. In fact, with technology, we love to talk about technology. What a great time to get together and talk about things that you're doing. Let's go to the phones. Let's go to the one of the 330 area codes, which I suspect might be by a Skype. But who's there? Hi, who's on the phone?
Oh, hi, Professor. My name's Jonathan.
Hey, Jonathan.
I'm from Ohio. That's 330 from Ohio.
Aha.
I was calling about, I'm kind of a little bit further past A+. Right now, I work about mid-tier IT and network operations center. We're starting to open up paying for certifications, so we're basically going baseline for Network Plus. I was wondering what you feel about going back to like A+ and possibly taking that, even, maybe if we're working on like a Network Plus, Security Plus, and kind of going back for an A+. Do you think it's worth it to go back, or kind of go more on and pick your professional IT path?
It's a common question because the A+ is mentioned so much in almost everything you read. It's almost the ubiquitous certification, it seems, that the industry looks for. But in your scenario, and especially in a network operations center, you've got NOC responsibilities. There's switches, there's routers, there's wide area network connections, there's IPsec connections, there's the encryption across the network, your troubleshooting network connectivity. There's VLANs, there's trunking. You're already well beyond what the beginning A+ material consists of. And when you're looking, I guess the next question would be then, what do you want to be able to do as your next steps? And you should map out, where do I want to go from here? And you probably have in your mind some topics that you really enjoy. When I started with computers, I dealt primarily with the Windows operating system. And then I started looking at the network pieces. And this network stuff's really interesting. And my path kind of led me over to the network side, and I did a lot of networking. That led me to an organization that sold protocol analyzers and being a systems engineer for them, because what's more networking than working down at the packet level? And I thought that's fantastic. And it just kind of led me there. I started with Windows and got my MCSE, and then kind of left the operating system behind to some degree. Obviously, knowing how Windows works across the network became useful for the protocol analysis piece. And the protocol analysis piece eventually got me into security as well, because if you know networking, you can really know how firewalls operate and how IPsec encryption should be working in those particular pieces. So knowing how to install a new hard drive and install Windows eventually got me into network security, but I would not have gone back and taken the A+ once I'd gotten in my network role, because nothing from that point on really had a direct relation to the topics that were on the A+, and the people that were going to be hiring me for these next jobs weren't looking for the A+ certification. So you may want to decide what you want to do in life or what your next step will be in your career, and then figure out what are those people looking for. Maybe you can find some of that out on the dice.coms and the careerbuilder.coms of the world, and go out there and find out what are people that are doing, I don't know what your next step would be, network security or a network operating system center, maybe a larger network operating center. Find out what Amazon wants from their operators. Find out what Microsoft is looking for. Maybe it's working for a vendor as a systems engineer, which has a completely different set of challenges associated with it. Find out what they want, and then they're going to tell you things you've never heard before. You want a what? A CISSP? I have no idea what that is. Let me go down the line of that piece. Generally, they're not looking for A+, though. So this is one of those times when I think on the industry, people sometimes will talk down to the A+ certification, or they'll talk down to the Network Plus or Security Plus, but that's because they're already in the network security roles. Of course, they don't need an A+ certification. You're already well beyond that piece of it. But the A+ certification, if you're trying to get that foundational job, that's a great certification to have. I would think in your role, I would think the next step for you, they probably aren't looking for that. Although I can tell you, I first got my Security Plus first, then I went and got Network Plus second, and then I finally got the A+ certification. And the only reason I got the A+ certification is because I wanted to make an A+ course, because I was in a security role. They didn't care that I had an A+ or not. So you're going to have to put everything in context eventually. Does that make sense, Jonathan?
Yeah, it's pretty much where I'm finding myself right now. I'm kind of, I'm mid-30s. I've been actually doing this for about 8 years. And I originally kind of fell into this role. My base was building computers, stuff like that. That's where I originally came from. So I still appreciate A+, the hardware, software side of everything. And I think it's also nice to, possibly refresh. Stuff does, your IT field, you're constantly learning. Your job is never done learning. And, I just thought about maybe going back. If it's paid for, I thought about doing it anyway. And, you shed light on picking a field. That's kind of where I'm at right now, because I'm going through my Network Plus, and it's, there's a lot of things I know because I'm in the field, but it's also helped me fill the gaps, which is kind of nice. And I'm starting to get to the security side and everything like that. And I'm actually, I was originally I'm in the, routers and switching and the full network side of it. And then we got into the security, and that's kind of intriguing me now. And I'm just, how much do you think you should dabble in each to really decide where you want to go without, I wouldn't say, studying almost everything is a waste of time, but kind of streamline your path.
Boy, I wish it was that straightforward. I wish just tell me what box I need to check, and I'll know exactly what direction I'll need to go in that piece. And it rarely works quite so seamlessly, but there are some very broad brushstrokes that you can paint. For instance, if you're getting into operating systems, you want to have a Microsoft focus or a Linux focus, it seems. Unless you're a Mac OS house, then you have an Apple focus. If you're getting into networking, you generally focus on hardware or companies that provide your networking infrastructure. And for many of the companies out there, they focus, for instance, on Cisco. Maybe they have Juniper, something of that sort. So you're looking at certifications that are very focused in that manufacturer. Maybe you're interested in getting into VMware and doing things in a virtualization storage management environment. Then you would do more VMware certifications. And then, of course, you have emerging technologies all the time that are coming out. And these latest number of years, it's really been focused on the software-defined networking and the virtualization environments. So there's some those are the very broad brushstrokes. And if you're really interested in security, you cannot get enough networking. Get as much networking as you possibly can if you're planning to get into security, because network security is nothing but networking. It is just 99% networking, and the other 1% is you trying to figure out how to get the SIM to work. Everything else is just trying to figure out and apply security policies to networking equipment. So understanding maybe you have a firewall focus. I'd love to do more with firewalls. Let me learn more about the Palo Alto Networks firewall, the Checkpoint firewall, the Cisco ASA firewall. Just pick some of those core technologies, and what you'll find generally is when you're in a role in an organization already, there will be some gaps of knowledge that will be very obvious to you where, gosh, nobody really knows how to run this box. All they tell me is, please don't turn it off because we don't know if it will turn on again. And it's those devices you should start going to, because if you can be a master in those things, you're not going to have, you'll of course be the master in your organization, but there will be other organizations that need a master in those particular technologies as well. Did I turn you down?
Well, thanks for the advice.
There we go. Well, very good. Jonathan, let us know how it goes. Thanks for calling.
Thanks. Have a good one, Professor.
It's really, I think, the biggest challenge is figuring out what to do next. That's one that I kind of just, the path through my career has had highs and lows. You never pick right 100% of the time, but you always learn something. And it was where I get a lot of my career development advice is from Jerry Seinfeld, obviously, because I watch Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, which is a great web series that he has where he just interviews comedians. They go in a car, they go in an awesome car somewhere, and they get coffee. So all of these things I love. I love comedy. I love cars. I love coffee. So he was mentioning in his latest one, and I think it was the one he did. Actually, I'm not sure which one it was. I watched a few the other night, but it was probably the Stephen Colbert one where he talked about pain is where you are learning something very quickly. Whenever something is painful, you are getting a huge influx of knowledge all at once. So even if you pick wrong, you're learning a lot all at one time. Not really the best way to learn, but sometimes the only way to learn those things. Let's go to the phones. Another 330 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Hi, Professor. This is Laura.
Hi, Laura. Thanks for calling.
Hi. It's good to talk to you. I'm glad you have these videos out for free. They're very helpful.
Great.
I have a question for you. I started college late, got my associate degree in computer information systems, doing like the Cisco, in 2007.
Great.
But most of my career has been in administration. I also got another associate degree, but that's in art. So most of my career has been in administration, and I passed my 801. I'm just trying to get back into my computer IT field.
Okay.
I've run into a few people who are in IT, and they make really good money, more so than I could in the field that I'm in now. And I have had a couple of interviews. One of them, we just couldn't come to terms on salary, and it was a very long drive for me. It would have been an excellent opportunity, though, for sure. But my question is, how do I transition over as well? Because I'm not young anymore, that young, but I have a lot of experience, and I want to go for my A+ and then get go to the next step. And I know learning is a lifelong thing, and that's what I plan to do. And I just want to know, am I going to be valued? Am I going to be successful? Am I going to make $65 or so a year?
This is I think the biggest one of the biggest challenges for people who are in a role. They're in a career. They've been doing something for some time, and now they would love to be able to shift gears and really do something different with their career. And it's this balancing act, because now by the time you get to this point, we've built a life. We have a family. You may be married. You might have children. You've got family in a particular area. There's people you know. You were talking about the drive. You don't want to have to move somewhere, which is not just you picking up out of your apartment a box or two. You're talking about a significant change in life to move from one place to another. It's not that simple to kind of fit into that into the world of somebody who's just starting off again. So we have to. And I've had to do this myself. You kind of have to create Create those places where you're willing to make a concession with those pieces. And you're already doing some of that. You know what makes sense for you. You knew that much money for a 2-hour drive made no sense whatsoever. But there's going to be something that does. But you're going to have to, I think, more than others, and I mentioned this on an earlier call, is network with people who are in this particular field. One thing advantage that you have, go ahead.
Okay. I was actually in a user group, and I did a presentation there just on email. But anyway, I found that the people in the user groups are a lot older than me even. They're like my mother's age, or even in between my grandparents and my mother's age. So I didn't find the young people there who are up to date on their knowledge and stuff. Not that these people aren't smart or anything, but I'm not sure. So I got into another user group. And again, members don't seem to be attending, and we're not gaining new members, and I'm not sure what to think about these groups. And again, there's an older crowd.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, and you do have to be careful because you're not really looking for the generic computer user group. There's a user group where I live here that is focused on Mac, but what it really is for people that are retired to understand how to use an iPad. I'm not talking about those user groups. And you really have to find the right ones. And that's why I specifically mentioned some that make sense. A user group from Microsoft user group, and maybe specifically Microsoft servers. And then there's adjuncts of the Microsoft user groups. A Cisco user group. There is an ISSC, which is more security. You can look that one up. ISSC is for is another set. There's also these other regional user groups as well. These are corporate IT user groups, and you should be able to get the feel for those when you're trying to get into working with them. Those are the ones you're looking for. If you know somebody who's at one of those organizations that goes to some of these user groups, ask them which ones they're going to. If there is a very large trade show in your area, there are regional trade shows as well in every city out there that aren't well advertised, but you can find them online for a regional IT trade show. And almost always there will be a local user group of some kind that's at the trade show that's focusing on those enterprise / education / professional sized types of topics. Those are the ones you should be looking for.
Awesome. Thank you.
Let me know how it goes. And if you want, send me an email directly. Let me know your area, and I can kind of flesh out for you some things that I see in your area. Like here's one I think would be good. Here's another one I think would be good. Here's some of the names of the ones I've been to before, so you can at least get a feel for some of the things I would be looking for. And if I can't find one, I'll tell you the ones that I would know kind of nationally or regionally in those particular areas.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thanks for calling.
All right, bye.
That's such a challenge, though, because you want to find the right place to go to do the right thing. And those user groups can be fantastic resources, but you want to do that. Yeah, you do want to be careful. There is a group in I'm here, the headquarters here in Tallahassee, and in our headquarters here, there's a number of user groups, and some are designed for people who are just trying to understand computers. Those aren't the ones I want you to go to. I want you to go to the professional corporate user groups for those pieces of it. Let's go back to the phones. We've got the 908 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Hello?
Hi, what's your name?
Hi, Jessica.
Hi, Jessica. What can we do for you?
Okay, I was referred to you from a coworker because I was expressing my interest into going into the field of IT.
Okay.
As far as security. I've been doing security for about 6 years now, and I wanted to progress in that field, and I noticed that a lot of things are becoming more technical, so I wanted to branch out, and I wanted to know about the A+ that you have.
Sure. What type of security piece, or what part of security are you working with today?
Well, right now, I currently work for a pharmaceutical company,
okay,
and I am in the Global Command Center. I've never done IT before, so that's why I wanted to take up A plus.
Gotcha. So this would be more of physical security or securing like a perimeter of a location, that type of thing?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Like what we do here, they do a lot of troubleshooting and definitely firewalls, because there's a lot of information that we can't
I would imagine.
let leak out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
I think the suggestion of your coworker was a pretty good one. The A+ certification is what the industry considers to be the kind of the foundation. It is the baseline of where really everything else begins. And it's where you get the broadest understanding of computers and laptops and mobile devices. There's a little bit of networking thrown in, a little bit of network security added to that. And it kind of gives you a very broad set of knowledge across really everything in IT. You kind of drill off into other places from there. So if you were trying to get into and understand what is all this technology about, A+ is a great place to start. The A+ materials that are out there, you have many choices. It's probably one of the most popular certifications in the world in IT. So one of the things that you'll find is there's many different books available. Obviously, my video series is available to watch for free online. So you can watch all of my videos and go through all of those pieces. Some people will read the books and they'll watch the videos with no intention of taking the certification. Others might, but it's a great place to start learning and building from the very bottom. I would recommend you go to Amazon, look for CompTIA A+ books and see what types of books are there and what people are saying about them, because you need a good book. And then make sure, as I mentioned earlier in the study group, make sure you go to the CompTIA website and download their exam objectives. And that should be the first thing you do, is go to exam objectives. You can find it easily through Google, or you can go to professormesser.com/objectives, and it takes you right to the CompTIA site where you can download those.
Oh, perfect.
Start with that.
Okay.
Have a look through those pieces. Kind of start building your amount of knowledge you're going to need, and then you can start reading the book, watching the videos, and get a better understanding of what you're going to need to know for the exam. I think that's a great place to start.
Perfect. One last question,
Sure.
and I won't hold you up. Where would I go after that? Once I finish the A+, do I go straight to networking, or do I go to troubleshooting and then to security, or the opposite?
This is a very good question, because it's one that doesn't have a real good answer. I generally recommend for people to get as much networking as possible right after the A+, because I feel that networking has impact on every single part of IT. Whatever you end up doing in IT, whether it's database management, data server or data center operations, if you're doing operating systems, if you're doing network security, if you're doing hardcore networking, obviously, if you're doing anything in IT, it touches the network. So having some knowledge in networking, I think, can be very valuable. And I recommend usually that Network Plus be your next step. And from there, it really depends on what you want to do. Because there is generally where you're forking off into different areas. Maybe you want to go into databases. I'll go learn more about databases. You want to learn more about virtualization? I'll jump into virtualization. I want to do networking. I'll do Cisco or some other company. If I want to do a security, maybe I jump more into the security side or the additional networking side. I think getting a foundation with A+ and at least a foundation with Network Plus, if not a higher level networking certification, would be a good place to start.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jessica. Let us know how it goes. Keep us in touch. I want to hear how this story ends.
Sure will. Thanks.
Take care.
Bye.
All right. Phone lines are open at 855-785-RJ45. We've got a few more minutes left. I got 4 more minutes left. What I mean, a few more minutes left. But it's not like I'm going anywhere. I'm going to eat lunch. I'm going to warm up some paella. Have a soda. So I have some time. It's not like I have to run away from what we're doing here. I need to clean up the studio. It's a bit of a mess. You get to see this picture of the studio. And in the chat room, people said you need to do like a larger tour of the studio. And I do. The problem is that it's a mess. I need to clean it up. And if I would just clean up the place, I'd feel better about showing it to you. It's not that bad. It's just, there's a box. There's just boxes. I moved into here, at the end of the year, beginning of this year, and there's still boxes sitting around, it's like anything else you need to move. What I need to do is take everything in the box and put it into the garbage because you haven't touched it in 6 months. That should be the rule. And that means next week I need something that was in that box. It drives me crazy. What is that? Now we're doing pop quiz questions on the type of thermos that I'm using. This was actually a pretty important thing because the number one rule when you have this kind of equipment around you is to never have open liquids. Now, I break that rule constantly, but not on a study group. It's hard enough. There's obviously a lot of moving parts here. I'm adjusting audio on this arm over here with the mixer. I'm adjusting video on the video board. I'm doing the screen so I can see what's happening in the chat room and I can see what's happening with the questions and the queue here. But the Contigo it just doesn't drip. This is just an amazing thing. Contigo makes this. And I wouldn't use anyone else because it's just awesome. It has no drip whatsoever. It's really remarkable. I would not go anywhere else for trusting any liquids near this equipment. Brought to you by your friends. They don't give me any money. I just like their stuff. Contigo. Go to. In fact, if you want to, the only thing I can tell you, they're now a sponsor because if you go to professormesser.com/Amazon, you can buy your Contigo for exactly the same as if you went to Amazon directly, except some of the proceeds go towards supporting the site. So there you go. I should probably promote my Amazon link a little more. I just don't do it because I think everybody does, and it just becomes numb after a while. But I should probably put something on the homepage. If you're wanting to buy something at Amazon, go to professormesser.com/Amazon and buy it from there. It's the same prices, the same front end, same store as Amazon. It's just that it helps keep things running here at Professor Messer, and I love Amazon anyway. In fact, I have that battery that I'm getting for my iPhone that was broken, my iPhone 5. I don't even have a 5S. My iPhone 5 I'm getting today. I'm hoping that fixes it because obviously the new iPhones come out in about a couple months. They're at least announced in a couple of months. I don't want to get a new phone and then the new ones come out. What good is that? So that's one of those that's a real challenge for me is having that happen. Let's go to the phone because we got people calling. We could talk to people on the phone. We got 402 area code. What's your name, caller?
Yes, my name's Mike.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Well, I was curious. I'm currently enrolled at a community college taking hardware, the first section.
Okay.
And after this, I'm going to take the first section of the A+, and then continue to get the other half of the test. Could you get a job with just that certification and then keep working toward? I'm going to get my Cisco administration.
Okay.
Eventually.
Great. You certainly could.
I want to get my hands wet, feet wet into the field, just with the changing careers totally.
I think it's a great place to start. It certainly puts you at a different level than somebody who does not have their A+ certification. And this is one of the things you will often hear. If you were to ask this question out on Reddit, you get 10 different answers, all of them very different. But there's certifications obviously would not guarantee you a job anywhere, just as nothing guarantees a job anywhere. And certifications don't have the same weight as, for instance, some type of practical experience, because that's obviously important for jobs as well. Formal education certainly helps towards getting a position at an organization. But I think the A+ certainly shows that you've now got this certification. You're now knowledgeable in these topics that were on the certification exam. And if someone's in the process of hiring and they use that as a criteria, that would certainly help you during the interview process. And I think it's one of those where when you start working towards a job, it's never just any one thing. But I think the more things you add, the better success you're going to have. And it's going to be more than the certification. It's also going to be all of the stories that come from you applying the things that you learned in the certification. I think that ultimately is going to be the most important part during the interview.
Okay. No, I I just wanted to switch careers, and so hopefully, eventually, I'll have my Cisco certification. But I wanted to just what would be a good entry level.
When I started with this piece, when I started in fixing computers, that's where I started before I got into networking and protocol analysis and security. It was all about fixing computers. I got out of college and went to work for a company that was a computer company in South Miami. And we sold personal computers primarily to the state and local government. And I went from, I installed computers. I took a computer out to a location. I would put it on someone's desk. I would plug everything in. I would say, voila, and off I went to the next one. If somebody forgot a printer cable, I delivered a printer cable. Sometimes I did hard drive upgrades and memory upgrades. And I kind of started with that piece and got familiar with it and met people in the industry, met people at an insurance company, met people at these places I was going, and realized that's a nice job there. I would love to work in their help desk, and got a job working in their help desk. I told them, let me know if you have any openings. They said, wow, you know everything about fixing this stuff. We should have you work for us. And I think it's a stepping stone. It always gets you to the next thing. And I think many people would love to jump into network security. And I say, nobody's going to hire you for network security. They're going to hire someone familiar with networking to work in network security. And they'll probably hire somebody in networking who's familiar with the organization from the help desk. So very often it is a stepping stone. You start at one place so that you can get to the next one there as well.
All right. Well, I really appreciate your videos, and I enjoy them. And along with taking the class, I watch your videos.
That's great.
Actually, my professor says, watch Professor Master.
I like your professor a lot. Please send him my regards. Thanks for calling.
Bye.
Bye-bye. That's one of those where I do hear from professors all the time who say, can I watch these in class? Yeah, absolutely. Please. If you have you find them valuable at all, absolutely. Feel free to use them and have them there. We've come to the top of the hour, and I am out of phone calls. And in order to not have this go on and on and on, we're going to finish things up with the study group now. I want to, of course, remind everybody that you can, of course, find me on the Twitter and the YouTube. My A+ course notes are certainly available at professormesser.com/A+CN. Again, GTS Learning has the GTS Learning Freestyle Labs, so you could find out more about those as well at professormesser.com/freestyle labs. A reminder again is that our Network Plus study group that normally would be next week on Saturday is not next week. It's Saturday plus a few days all the way to Wednesday. So we're going to go more than a week. We'll go about 10 days until the next study group. Make sure you check the calendar at professormesser.com for the calendar listing. And of course, thanks to all of you. I would not be able to do this without your support. I want to thank everybody for joining us today and participating in our Q&A. Thanks for calling in and with all the great questions. We'll see you next month on the study group. Thanks for calling, everyone. See you then.